The message arrived at 10:43 p.m. Ethan was finishing some work on his laptop when his phone vibrated on the desk beside him. Without thinking, he reached for it. One new voice message. Sender, Jake. Ethan froze. Jake had disappeared 3 years ago. He hadn't moved away. He hadn't cut ties with his friends. He hadn't stopped answering calls. He had simply vanished. The police searched for months. Volunteers combed through forests and abandoned buildings. Eventually, the search ended and the case became just another file collecting dust. Yet here it was. Jake's number. The same number Ethan had never been able to delete from his contacts. With trembling fingers, he pressed play. Silence. For several seconds there was nothing but static. Then a familiar voice spoke. Ethan, if you're hearing this, don't open the door at 11:17 p.m. The message ended. That was it. 7 seconds. Ethan listened again, and again, and again. It was Jake. Not someone who sounded like him. Not an AI imitation. Jake. He looked at the clock. 10:46 p.m. 31 minutes until 11:17. Very funny, he muttered. Maybe someone was playing a prank. Maybe the number had been reassigned. Maybe it was some kind of glitch. His phone vibrated again. A text message, do not answer if someone claims to be me. Ethan immediately pressed the call button. The number was unavailable. He tried again, unavailable. Again, unavailable. 10:53 p.m. Ethan stood up and walked through his apartment. 5th floor. 1 bedroom. 1 front door. 2 windows. He locked the door. Then checked it again. Then locked the chain. He laughed nervously at himself. Seriously, he was afraid of a message from someone who had disappeared 3 years ago. The phone rang. Ethan jumped. Caller ID, Jake. He stared at the screen until the call stopped. A new text appeared seconds later. Good. You didn't answer. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet. Even the refrigerator had stopped humming. The traffic outside seemed to disappear. 10:58 p.m. Ethan opened his photo gallery. There was Jake by the lake. Jake at graduation, Jake on a camping trip. The final photo had been taken the day before he vanished. Jake stood in front of an abandoned house on the edge of town, smiling at the camera. Back then, they had explored abandoned places for their online channel. That was the last place Jake had ever been seen. Ethan had never gone back. He had never even talked about it. Another message arrived. You're looking at the photos right now. Ethan stopped breathing. Do not go near the door, even if you hear a familiar voice. 10:59 p.m. He slowly looked around the apartment. Nobody. He was alone. The phone vibrated again. It already knows where you are. Ethan typed quickly. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Jake. Prove it. Several seconds passed. Then, in 7th grade, you broke the gym window, and I told the principal it was a basketball accident. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Nobody knew that. Another message appeared. You still hide your spare key in the tea box above the stove. Ethan slowly turned toward the kitchen cabinet. The key was there. Exactly where it had always been. The phone lit up once more. Ethan listened carefully. At 11:17 p.m. it will come. Do not open the door under any circumstances. Who will come? A long pause. Then, me, 11:05 p.m. Ethan read the message over and over. Me, what did that even mean? Suddenly the lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Then darkness. Complete darkness. The power was out. Only the glow of his phone illuminated the room. Ethan walked to the window. People were standing in the courtyard below. Dozens of them. Perfectly still. Not moving, not speaking, not looking at one another. Only looking up at his apartment. Ethan stepped back. His phone vibrated. Don't look outside. He lowered the phone slowly. Too late. 11:11 p.m. 6 minutes left. He sat on the floor near the door, clutching the phone tightly. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, knock. One knock. He looked at the clock. 11:12 p.m. Another knock. Knock, knock, knock. As if someone was checking whether he was home. Ethan? Jake's voice, exactly Jake's voice. Open up. It's me. Ethan said nothing. Come on, man. Enough with the joke. Open the door. Knock, knock, knock. The phone vibrated. Do not answer. Ethan, I know you're in there. The voice became softer, almost sad. I'm cold. A message appeared. It always says that. Ethan, knock, knock. We're friends. 11:16 p.m. The knocking stopped. The silence was worse. The seconds crawled by. 11:16:52. 11:16:53. 11:16:54. The phone lit up. No matter what happens, don't open it. 11:16:58. 11:16:59. 11:17 p.m. Boom. The door shook violently. Boom. Again. Boom again. Ethan. The voice no longer sounded like Jake. It changed, became deeper. Wrong. Open the door. Kitchen cabinets flew open. A glass shattered in the sink. The television screen flickered despite being unplugged. Boom, 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 boom. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. His phone vibrated one final time. One more minute. The pounding continued. The door felt seconds away from breaking apart. You have to let me in. 11:17:31, 11:17:2, 11:17:55. And then nothing. Silence. 11:18 p.m. Ethan didn't move for 10 minutes. Finally, he approached the door. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No damage. No sign that anyone had ever been there. Only one object rested on the floor. An old compass keychain. Jake's keychain. The one he had carried the day he disappeared. The next morning, the power worked perfectly. The neighbors said they hadn't heard anything during the night. No banging. No shouting. Nothing. Ethan almost convinced himself it had all been a nightmare. Until his phone vibrated. 8:14 a.m. You did it. Ethan stared at the screen. Now listen carefully. Another message appeared. In 3 days, it will be outside apartment 42. Then another. It moves on. And finally, 3 years ago I opened the door. No more messages ever came from Jake's number. 3 days later, Ethan stood outside apartment 42, trying to figure out what he could possibly say. How do you convince someone not to open their door at exactly 11:17 p.m.? How do you explain something you barely believe yourself? And most importantly, what happens if they do open it? But one question haunted Ethan more than any other. If Jake opened the door 3 years ago, who sent the last message? The voice appeared at 2:03 a.m. In 2 minutes, you will pass an abandoned gas station on your right. Ethan laughed. What kind of late-night radio station is this? The 4 friends were driving home after a concert. 2 minutes later they passed an abandoned gas station. Nobody laughed after that. The radio continued. In 1 minute, the driver will turn on his high beams. Without thinking, Ethan switched them on. Silence filled the car. Okay, Ryan whispered. That's weird. The voice continued. In 3 minutes, a fox will cross the road. 3 minutes later, a fox ran across the highway. Sarah turned off the radio. The radio turned itself back on. Please do not interrupt the broadcast. The temperature inside the car suddenly felt colder. In 11 minutes, your vehicle will stop beside a bridge. Ethan immediately turned onto another road. The GPS recalculated. Every route led back to the same highway. Exactly 11 minutes later, the engine died beside an old bridge. Then the voice spoke again. In 9 minutes, 1 passenger will die. Nobody moved. Estimated time of death, 2:17 a.m. The dashboard clock showed 2:08, 9 minutes. Panic exploded inside the car. Someone's messing with us. This isn't possible. Turn it off. Ethan ripped the radio from the dashboard. The voice continued through the speakers. The passenger who looked into the rear-view mirror will be the one who dies. Everyone looked up. Everyone except Emily. Ethan looked, and saw someone sitting in the back seat. A 5th passenger. A man wearing a dark coat. His face hidden in shadow. Do you see him? Ethan shouted. See who? Sarah asked. Nobody else could see him. At 2:14 a.m., the stranger slowly turned toward Ethan and smiled. At 2:15 a.m., Ryan jumped from the car and ran across the bridge. A moment later he screamed. When the others reached him, he stood shaking. Someone pushed me. There was nobody there. At 2:16 a.m., Emily suddenly spoke. I can see him now. Everyone froze. He's sitting beside me, the radio crackled. Death travels with you every day. Most people simply never notice the extra passenger. 2:16:50. The stranger stood up. 2:16:55. He extended his hand toward Emily. 2:16:59. Silence. 2:17 a.m. Nothing happened, everyone exhaled in relief. Then Sarah looked toward the back seat. Where's Emily? Her jacket remained, her phone remained, her purse remained. Emily was gone. As though she had never existed. The police found no evidence that Emily Parker had ever been in the car. No records, no social media accounts, no driver's license. No photographs. In every picture the friends shared, there was simply an empty space where someone should have been standing. 1 month later, Ethan drove that same road alone. The radio switched on by itself. Good evening, Ethan. He pulled the car to the side of the road. Who are you? Static filled the speakers. Then the voice replied, I only announce arrivals. Arrivals of who? Several seconds passed. Then, your new passenger. Slowly, Ethan raised his eyes toward the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat, waiting, smiling. And this time Ethan recognized the face. One night, Daniel stepped into the elevator of his 12-story apartment building and pressed the button for the 8th floor. Instead of going up, the elevator began descending. 12, 10, 7, 3, 1, 0. Then the display changed to something impossible. -1, the elevator stopped. The doors slid open. Beyond them stretched a dimly lit hallway with yellow lights, faded wallpaper and old apartment doors. Daniel knew immediately that this wasn't the basement. It looked like a residential floor. A floor that shouldn't exist. The doors remained open for several seconds before closing again and carrying him to the 8th floor as if nothing had happened. The next day he mentioned it to the building manager. Her expression changed instantly. If the elevator ever takes you there again, she said quietly, don't get out. Why? Because it doesn't bring people to where they are going. She looked away. It brings them to where they wish they could return. 2 weeks later, the elevator stopped at floor -1 again. This time Daniel stepped out. The hallway looked strangely familiar. The old green floor tiles, the mailbox design, the smell of soup drifting through the air. Then he saw the apartment number. The Carter family. His family. The exact nameplate that had hung outside his childhood apartment 20 years earlier. The door opened before he could knock. His mother stood there. Alive. Young, healthy. Exactly as she had been before cancer took her. Daniel. She smiled. Dinner's getting cold. Inside sat his father who had died in a car accident 10 years earlier. About time you got home, son. Daniel could barely breathe. This isn't real. His father smiled. Are you sure? The apartment was perfect. The smell of dinner. The sound of the television. The warmth of home. Everything he had lost. Everything he had wanted back. Then he noticed something wrong. The clock on the wall read 11:03 p.m. Its hands never moved. Outside the windows there was no city, no streetlights, no buildings. Only darkness. Stay with us, his mother whispered. You don't have to be alone anymore. A bell rang somewhere down the hallway. The elevator. Its doors stood open, waiting. If you leave now, his father said softly, you may never see us again. And if I stay? Neither of them answered. From the far end of the hallway, doors began opening. People stepped outside, dozens of them, each one calling for someone they loved, someone they missed, someone they had lost. Then Daniel saw someone standing among them. Himself, older, much older. Don't stay, the older Daniel said. Why? Because after a while, you forget there was ever another world. Daniel ran. The elevator doors closed just as darkness rushed down the corridor toward him. 2 years have passed since then. Every night at exactly 11:03 p.m., the elevator descends by itself. Sometimes the doors open for a few seconds, sometimes laughter drifts out, sometimes the smell of his mother's cooking fills the hallway, and sometimes he hears his father's voice. Daniel, dinner is ready. Every year it becomes harder to remember which world was real.